Hello friends, my name is Salman and you are watching my channel Solid Tech. In the last video we have covered the component of data communications. Now in this video I will show you the two models, TCP IP models and OSI models. So let's start our slides. In this slide I will examine OSI model, introduction of data encryption, identify names of data chunks. So basically OSI model was initially developed in 1970s for data communication. OSI model have a 7 layers, application layer, session layer, presentation layer, transport layer, data link layer and physical layer. I omit 2 layers from here because they are not important in data communication. So all the communication between servers or client start with the applications layer, which is the topmost layer and which number is 7. 7 number always is application layer. So we take an example of how communication occur between a server and a client. For example, our server is asked for a website log called ruralsite.com. So server will respond with the help of application layer because all the application serving processes start with the application layer. So it will deliver the required website to the client, But the actual process is very different from these process. So we divided the whole process into steps and relate to the OSI model and TCP model. So what application does? On application layer, data is a full website. Now we can divide it into small pieces, which is called chunk. So whenever we deliver any website or any other application to the server, to the client, we can divide this whole data into a small pieces, or which is called a chunk. So we can send one chunk at a time with some other protocols to the client, and this process is running very fast. So we don't realize that we are coming from the chunk, and after receiving this chunk we can combine this into a whole web page. So what application does? Application layer handed over this data to the lower layer, which is transport layer. As I told you, I don't consider the 2 layers, presentation layer and session layer. So what application layer does? It gives the its a small chunk to a previous next layer as a payload. So as you can see, it handed over a small chunk of data to the payload and it is handed over the transport layer. Transport layer is the 4th layer of OSI model. In transport layer, we have a chunk of data with a transport layer header. Each layer in a data communication have some specific header which is added to the starting of the previous layer data. So at transport layer, the data is called segment. What is segment? A chunk of data with a transport layer header which is called segment. Basically, transport layer header is also called TCP header. I will explain it in detail in my upcoming series, what TCP header, but at that time you should understand what is a segment. So what is a segment? Segment, the data lies on a transport layer with the transport layer header, which is called TCP header, is called a segment. Now the same process goes again. The transport layer handed over their data to the next layer, which is network layer. So as you can see, the transport layer data now move to the payload as a network layer 3. So I handed over my transport layer data to the network layer as a payload, and now data is on the network layer, which is a layer 3 of a TCP/IP OSI model. Now on a data on a network layer is called a packet. So what is a packet? A chunk of data with a network layer header is called a packet. Network layer header is also called a IP header because it contains the information of source IP address, destination IP address. I will describe these header types in detail in my upcoming videos. But at that time, you know what is a packet. Basically, what is packet? A chunk of data with a network layer header is called a header. Packet. So data at layer 3 is called a packet, but data at layer 4 is called a segment. So now the network layer handed over the data to the next layer, which is data link layer. So in data link layer, the payload, the layer 3 network data is become the payload for data link layer. So I handed over my whole data to the data link layer, which is the layer 2 of a OSI model, and now the data is called frame. Frame, as I told you, every segment, every layer have put some initial information at the beginning, which is called header. At layer 2 we have a Ethernet header, and the total chunk of data with a data link header is called a frame. The data lies at the layer 2 is called a frame. So every layer adds some additional information to the previous data. This process is called encapsulation. As you can, for example, let's take an example of encapsulation. We write a letter and we put in an envelope. This is called the encapsulation, because nobody knows what is inside the envelope. Same like if we put the envelope into a box and send it to another person, he doesn't know what is in the box and what is in the envelope. So this process is called encapsulation. So in encapsulation we add the previous data of the previous layer and add some additional information in the form of header to that layer. This is process called encapsulation. When we sending a data to anyone, we can encapsulate data into a encapsulate, and we receive the data when other side of the communication side, we decapsulate, we remove these packets from the data and get back the original data. So after second layer, the data goes to the first layer. So this is the original data. Basically, this is the small part of the original data, because we don't send all the data at once. We divide it into a chunks, and then we send a chunk with some header information of the layers to the other side of the communication. Now at the second layer goes handed over his data to the first layer, which is called physical layer. In physical layer, the data is transmitted into zeros and ones, because data is transmitted in the form of binary, and on the physical layer this binary data is converted into a electrical signal, which is passes over the Ethernet cable or copper cable, or if we are using any fiber optic type, so it will transmit into a light. So in this way the communication happening from application to physical layer. If you understand this concept, you can easily grab the advanced concept of VLAN, inter-VLAN routing, types of routing, firewalls. So I will describe all these features in my upcoming videos. So in a summary, we can say segment. What is segment? Segment is a data transport header plus data on the transport layer. What is packet? Packet occur on the layer 3 or network layer. Network layer header plus data is called packet. Network layer is also called TCP/IP layer in model. In TCP/IP model. Frame, what is frame? Data link layer header plus data, which is also called network interface layer in TCP/IP model. So this is the how the data is going through from one client to another client. So now I will show you what is a OSI model. Basically, in my previous lecture, I will describe the communication component of communication. So OSI model is composed of basically 7 layers, but we can consider only 5 layers, because they are very important in our data communication. The wireless, radio and glass, the medium is equivalent to physical layer of OSI model. As I described you in my previous model, the OSI physical layer is related to the physical part of the communication, which is about the medium. How can we transmit data from one place to another with the help of copper wire, fiber optic wire, or radio frequency. The other layer of the second layer of bottom second layer of a OSI model is called data link layer. Data link layer is associated with the communication within the same network. For example, is deal with the physical address or MAC address of the communicating device. I will describe this concept in detail in my upcoming video. Network layer is related to the IP addressing as we can see in my previous videos, this is responsible for routing. Router works on a network layer, as you can see, router, and it deals with all the IP addressing, all the global addressing. Transport layer is equivalent to the TCP model of the data communication, in which its function is to establish and communicate and tear down all the session within the client and server side. And application layer is deal with the website data or any type of data which we want to transfer. Likewise, we have another model which is called TCP/IP model. The TCP/IP model is composed of 4 layers, which is called network interface, internet, transport, and application. Basically, the difference between OSI model and TCP/IP model is that in TCP/IP model, we have combined 2 layers of OSI model, physical layer and data link layer, and we call it network interface. The function is the same as OSI model. In the network layer is called internet layer in TCP/IP model. The function of the network layer or internet layer is to provide the IP addressing or to provide the routed information and routing between the 2 destination devices, which is not at the same network, which is apart from the other, which is in my case global address. The transport layer is equivalent to transport layer, and the application layer is to application layer. Now there is a two layer also exists on OSI model, which is called session layer and presentation layer. But in actual data communication, these 2 layers don't play an important role in data communication. That's why I remove this from the OSI model. But there are some function of session layer and presentation layer. Some protocols work on that layers. For example, HTTPS and SSL work on a session layer. So this is the OSI model, TCP/IP model, and this is the rough model. So I told you previously that if you understand this model, you can easily grab the advanced concept of routing and switching. So in this video, thank you very much. If you like this video, please hit the share button and hit the like button of this video. Thank you.